Hello, we are live, and my name is Hector Flores. Welcome to the Projection Podcast, and today we have Dr. Julie Wiernik. Dr. J, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for having us here. I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But Dr. J, she's she's the owner of Texas Center for Sports Psychology. She's a licensed clinical sports and performance psychologist. And you also went to the University of North Florida, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's kind of get straight into it. Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, how you grew up, and kind of your journey leading up to being in sports from a young age.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great journey. I'm still on the journey. But my dad was a baseball player.
Okay.
He grew up in New Jersey. And he was a quarterback for football. He played center field and catcher. At about 18, he was actually drafted by the New York Yankees.
Oh.
And Mickey Mantle was in front of my dad.
Really?
Yeah, no, he did. And he went to Yankee Stadium and he hit 4 for 4. He had doubles. I mean, he crushed it.
Oh, wow.
I think he says one of his biggest things, but he wasn't as fast. He thinks his speed. But I think, years ago, my dad was born 1940. So 1958, they didn't make as much money back then. It was a different era.
Right.
His mom, his parents were immigrants. My grandmother was Russian, was probably the athlete in the family. And his dad was from Poland. And so I don't think they encouraged him like nowadays, with the financial.
Today's show is brought to you by Marco Bass Law Firm. You can reach him at marcobass.com or go to 210-239-6944.
Piece. So I think he faced, do I go in the minor league system and fight or do I get a career going? So he went to college, played college baseball. Then he became an accountant. He won't say he regrets not playing, but I almost know deep. My dad's not a talker. He's not one to just share his feelings. But he gave me the athletic ability and my brothers. So when I grew up they moved from New Jersey to South Florida when I was 3 because they were tired of the cold weather. So I grew up in a climate which was perfect for outdoor sports. My 2 older brothers were baseball players, football players. The traditional sports. So I kind of grew up on the baseball field. And so I played actually Little League baseball. I started coach's pitch. My dad coached me and it was coach's pitch at 7. And I played Little League from 7 to 12 because in South Florida they didn't have fast pitch softball. So I was a baseball player. So from 7 to 12, I made All-Stars. I played mostly second. But it was rough because I had to make a decision. Do I continue in baseball or do I switch to softball? So then I played slow pitch softball actually from 12 to 18. So I had a great glove. My glove, because in slow pitch you're getting rocket shots. So I had a really good glove. So I played third base my freshman year of high school, and then I played shortstop for sophomore. And then in high school, the difference nowadays too is back then, I graduated high school in 1992. We played multiple sports. So we're now, kids are getting burnt out. We'll talk about that.
Right.
Injuries and burnout. I was fortunate to play volleyball, basketball, softball, flag football, and so I felt more fresh. And so I never really suffered a lot of any arm injuries except for I had a left shoulder injury that I think I inherited from my dad that I eventually fixed. And then in high school I played, but then I really wanted to play in college. I wanted to play professional, but at 5'5".
That's everybody.
So I had the physical ability.
Taking a quick break. Want to know how to support our show? Go down below and like and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Back to the show.
But I think what I did lack, and this is what I'm with my kids nowadays, what I did lack is my swing was very different because I was playing Little League baseball and then slow pitch softball.
Yep, that'll
right?
do it.
So now how important technical ability is.
Right. So let me ask you this. So your dad, being a professional baseball player, how was he for you growing up? Was he very supportive? Obviously, he knows about, the mental game and things like that. But at a young age, with you and your brothers, obviously, I'm sure it was very competitive. I mean, was he kind of that figure, like he's training me to be the person I need to be the right way?
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting because my dad never really pressured me. He coached me hitting and fielding, and he would go out there for hours, but I never felt pressure. So like he never would talk to me about after games. Like he was very supportive, and he never said you have to play in college. Very, very different from the parents that we deal with nowadays. Yeah. Kind of the opposite. The only thing he did not like me getting angry or upset when I made a mistake.
Okay.
He would be very mad if I like showed attitude or whatever.
Right.
But I was very fortunate that the evolution of my journey was extremely self-driven. It was self-motivated. I didn't have anyone telling you.
Right. Different. I think that's the difference from today and how it was before, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But so you did play a lot of sports in high school. So softball was obviously your favorite sport, and you knew you wanted to do that in college. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So you did receive a scholarship to North Florida. Can you talk about a little bit about who else was recruiting you at the time?
Well, it was tricky because at the time I was at a disadvantage. Because I was playing slow pitch. So my dad got the jugs machine, the baseball machine, the hitting machine.
Right.
And he would put it on a field, and he would pitch to me, and I would hit off it. And I made videos, and I sent my videos from hitting off a machine because I didn't have anyone doing live underhand.
Yeah, right.
And my glove. And so I was being looked at by University of South Carolina, University of North Carolina, some big universities. But ultimately, and I had full rides at some junior colleges. University of North Florida came along. I think at the time I had really good grades. So I think at the time I was kind of like, I looked at junior college. I was almost like, I didn't really want junior college because it was a junior college. Nowadays it's different with baseball. But the the big Division I universities, they ultimately went with other shortstops, I think, that had fast pitch experience. But looking back, I feel like I probably would have loved to have walked on even to prove myself, because I feel I feel not that I settled, but I think there was more in my tank. And if I had better, I feel like if I had better coaching,
right.
Reflecting back.
So, and I know for me too, I played collegiate baseball and I had quite a few opportunities to play at different levels. Did you, when do you think you actually peaked as far as maturing in the sport of softball? Some people, and it's crazy to say, some people peak in high school and some of them peak their 4th or 5th year in college.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about?
Oh yeah, I know exactly, and that's how I got into this field.
Right.
Because I think growing up, no one talked about the mental part of it.
Right.
Even my dad. I mean, he never talked to me about confidence or how to relax or have a short-term memory for hitting and making errors.
Exactly.
So I kind of struggled with my own perfectionism and struggled with not knowing how to think or feel. And then my junior year of college is when it really hit me. That I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, right. I felt like, consciously I would say, Julie, move on, get over it. But unconsciously I wasn't getting over the mistake. So when I went to my off-campus apartment and I said, Julie, what the hell is going on? I didn't have a counselor. I probably was threatened even to go to a sports psychologist at the time.
Right.
When I realized that mistakes are going to happen no matter what, you're human. There's only so much you can control. A ball can hit a bad hop. And then I was like, oh my God, why am I trying so hard to not make mistakes? I'm going to make them anyways. So at that moment, that changed my life. And so I thought, God, could there be a career in this? Because I freed myself up and I learned how to be in the zone. I learned so much from that little conversation with myself.
Right.
So that is when I started, I think, to start peaking mentally. At 21, I started to realize, oh my gosh, I wish I would have had this information a lot younger.
Wow. I agree. Mm-hmm. So you did happen to get all conference in our region in college. Mm-hmm. Was that your junior year?
Yeah, my junior and senior year. And then I was academic All-American. Also, I was All-American for my grades. I had a 3.7 grade point average.
So you were figuring it out at that time, right?
Yeah, and that was one thing. My pride, and I tell my kids this all the time, your pride is not just on the athletic field. When you walk into a classroom, you should. I have a sign in my house and in my office says, "Do it with passion or not at all." I was always big on that. I didn't have to be perfect with grades, but I always felt like I remember dislocating my shoulder my junior year, my first game my junior year, and I dove to my left. It was a rocket line drive. Dislocated my shoulder, caught the ball, And the next day I had a final exam. And that night I was in the library with clay all over me with an injury studying. And I never once went to a teacher and asked for an extension. That wasn't in my DNA.
That wasn't you, yeah.
Like, it was like, no excuses. You get your shit done.
And you're doing it.
And you're doing it. The only time I asked for it is like, okay, I'm going for a road trip. What do I need to do? But I just got it done,
Yeah. So what was your undergrad? What did you study?
So when I entered undergrad, I did not know what I wanted to do. I thought about physical therapy.
Just like everybody else, right? They don't know, yeah.
Right. I thought about physical therapy, and then the idea of taking all the math and sciences it just wasn't what I wanted to do. And then my mom said, Julie, if you're a teacher and a coach, you can make a living out of it. So I majored in education and decided that is not what I want to do. I don't have the patience to teach. But I was so far along in education, and it was actually perfect because a lot of the classes I took, it was like secondary physical and health education. And it was like, I went into college and then I didn't figure out psychology until my senior year, but I had all these sports psychology classes and psychology classes anyways. So it was like the perfect kind of transition.
Yeah. So that was, and then so just explain a little bit after the life of, so I think I read something that you were playing a little bit of football. Is that true?
Yeah. So my coaches did not want us doing two sports a lot, right, in college.
Right. Yeah.
But I love flag football. So my junior, my junior and senior year, I quarterbacked.
Okay.
And I loved it. I loved it, but that's actually where I dislocated my shoulder again. And then I had thought about fixing my shoulder, which I did after college, and maybe going into the professional football league,
right?
Tackle football league for women.
Okay.
But I just decided that it was just too hard on my body and everything. But it's fun.
So you played football throughout your college softball career?
I played, I think 2 years I played in college.
Oh,
but
wow.
I think, you risk injury.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think coaches like that.
They don't.
But it was fun.
Yeah. So,
flags.
Yeah. So after college, so can you kind of describe kind of leading up to where you are now, right? After college, you went back to school. You said, hey, this is what I want to do. You went through the experience as a kid. You found some success in college, and you're like, hey, I think this is my calling, right? And for a lot of people, you don't really know what your calling is until you actually go through it.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit about that?
In fact, I'm literally getting goosebumps because it's the goosebumps are what makes you, excited about life and the meaningful aspects. But I think that when my junior year and senior year, when I thought about sports psychology, my ego was very much a big part of who I was. So my ego was like, ooh, I want to work for MLB. I want to work for the Olympics. I want to go travel with tennis players all over the world. But then I thought, well, if I'm going to be a sports psychologist, I probably should learn how to counsel people. And this is a big thing. This is my greatest, I think, success, my legacy in life is sports are great, but mental health and happiness and self-love and relationships and coaching and having fun, I mean, those are the most important pieces. So I was like, well, am I just going to do sports? I need to be a psychologist. So I went into a clinical psychology program where it wasn't sports. It was all like
just
dealing
broad
with
and
bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, psychological testing, IQ testing. I worked in Miami, Florida, counseling kids who were beaten and abused. I mean, I did a lot of hard work where I was like, God, is there a God?
So you saw the world, what's out there.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
And it was like, hate to say, it was like being in the minors with no food and water and heat, and you're just like suffering to try to get to the end game. You're trying to make it to the MLB, but you have a lot of work to do.
Right.
I did that, but it was the best thing ever because I want to sit with people for who they are, and it's not necessarily about if they're making millions of dollars, is are they happy within? Do they have great relationships? Are they enjoying their life? Are they having fun? And now it's evolved to coaching, like trying to develop great coaches and great parents. So it's more mental health than it is just sports performance.
Right. I feel like, and being around baseball and sports, I feel like you have to be able to be you, right? In order for you to be successful in the sport and have personality. I mean, guys who have personality, everybody loves personality, right? And I think as a psychologist, you really have to understand people. So it's hard for people to understand. I mean, there's things out there that go on every day and we don't know about, you know, behind closed doors, or what happens at school for a youth kid or a minor league baseball player away from home and their family, trying to make ends meet and just kind of go. So as far as kind of being a child growing up, you know, and I know you're a parent too for some boys that are going through the phase of trying to find out who they are so they can be a better person of themselves. Right. What are ways that you kind of go about in helping your two boys kind of understand, hey, this is life. And if you don't deal with it and you don't take care of yourself, you can't get where you want to get to.
Oh, I mean, I think that I am a student of myself. So the greatest part of me going to psychology is that all I want to do is to be have more self-awareness and to be a better human being, to be a better mom, to be a better psychologist. So I've done a lot of work on trying not to project a lot of my insecurities and my past onto my boys. So I already tell them that, and I tell parents this, that you have to retire your kids now. Like, they are not you. You can't project all your unresolved issues. Was I disappointed that would I have loved to have been a Major League Baseball player? And, is there disadvantage being a woman? Yeah. I have, my dad was very close. He could have, he didn't. I was a woman. I felt, gosh, it'd be really cool if I was a guy and, could have. So I have to be very mindful of that my sons know who I am. So therefore I told them that I always ask them, do you really like what you're doing? Like, do you like baseball? And if they said, Mom, I don't want to play anymore, would I be disappointed and sad? Absolutely. I would be disappointed and sad because I love the sport. Right. I love watching them play. But if that's not their path, that's not their path. If they want to go into dance and theater, I'm not into dance and theater and music. I don't know anything about it. But ultimately, to make it in this world, you have to have passion and fun. It's because you got to be able to suffer the grunt work. Right. Right? Right. I suffered a lot to be where I'm at. But you have to love it enough to suffer through it.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I asked that question is because I'm a mentor to a lot of parents and kids around the San Antonio community, and I try to really get them to think outside the box. Like, if you were to ask me this question, like, Hector, when you have kids, are you going to have that kid play baseball through college? I'm like, if you would have told me that question 10 years ago, I would have been like, he's playing, I don't care what. But now, since I'm, you mature and you know how things work, I'm like, I would like him to, just like you're saying, but I want to be supportive in what he does because everybody's different. There's people who are playing now and there's kids 10, 11, 12 years old that they might find their calling in something else. And at the end of the day, it's whatever makes you happy.
Well, when I was a kid at 11 or 12, I loved tennis. Oh, okay. And I was I was glued to the TV. But at 11 or 12, I wanted to go train at the Nick Bollettieri Academy, which is the IMG in it's a big academy. Right, IMG, sports. Right. Yeah, Nick Bollettieri Academy is where Andre Agassi trained. And I remember at 11 or 12 going, I want to go there. I want to give up everything and go train just for tennis. Yeah. I had hardly played tennis a whole lot because I was in primarily a baseball, football world. And when I asked my parents that, my mom goes, well, Julie, you've already gotten really good at baseball. Do you want to start all over again? But I picked up tennis now and I love it. The advantage of individual sports, I almost wanted my kids to do individual sports because team sports, politics, poor coaching, and you don't have a lot of control sometimes as a team sport athlete. I've encouraged them, but they don't want it. They don't want it. They play tennis for fun. But I think that with individual sports, you do have a lot of control. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can pick and hire your own coaches, but you lose the social piece and the team piece. But, as a sports psychologist right now, I have guys that play on all types of levels, mostly college and high school, because there's just, more of them in San Antonio. But there's coaches that are alcoholics. They're alcoholics and they're literally abusive, and they're still continuing to coach our children. And I'm like, what the hell? Am I going to let my kid go to coach like that? Yeah. I'm afraid for my kids sometimes if they're in team sports.
So do you think a coach can really, really make an impact on a player to be it or not it?
Yes. All of the above. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like when I get calls, I'm like, hey, Hector, so and so called me. The first thing I tell them is like, find out the culture and find out who this coach is. Who's recruiting you? Okay, assistant coach. Okay, you need to find a way to talk to the head coach and see if you can build some type of relationship with them. And trying to get some feel before you actually sign, because it's not. I mean, it's a tough game. You get signed, you sign a letter of intent for high school to college, and you're like, hey, I'm so excited. I'm playing baseball at this level, but little do they know there's a lot that happens behind closed doors, right? You want to play for someone who's going to take care of you. And
well, I think the problem is that parents are caught up in a lot of the greed and status. Division I is a big one. Oh, I want my kid to. I mean, it's so stupid. They go Division I, or and they're not recognizing that absolutely. Like there are so many toxic cultures. I mean, I can tell you a million stories of my athletes where their parents are like, go D1, go D1. And the coaches are horrible and toxic, and they want to be depressed and anxious and dropping out of the sport.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think we have, and that's why I want parents to listen. These podcasts are a way to educate people. That's why I'm doing a podcast. You're doing a podcast, is because parents need to open their eyes and educate themselves, because it can ruin. And we need to educate the world on poor coaching, like toxic coaching, and how enabling we enable our society too much.
I've seen a lot of poor coaching at the youth side. It's unbelievable what they make. I mean, I would see kids kind of go and run sprints because they lost a game. I'm like, what are you teaching there? At that level, it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. It matters what you're teaching the kids. Number one, you're teaching them to be a good person, and be disciplined, and then everything follows along. But back to the coaching, I think that's something that parents and players kind of need to look more into. So they can kind of get a bigger picture of what they're actually getting into. Right. So
a lot of roads to take.
Exactly. So that kind of goes into, I mean, obviously the parents and the coaching. And so why sports psychology?
Why? It's life.
Yeah.
To me, I like working with athletes, because athletes are driven and success oriented versus just counseling the everyday person. And number one, I love sports, and I couldn't play at a higher level other than college. And so I love working with athletes, but also athletes going through injuries, for example.
Yes.
I have some, and what's really cool is, and I'm glad that I'm on board with you as far as how important it is, the psychology, because they go into, some of these athletes, they go into the minor league system and they have their first injury, and all of a sudden their velo is down.
Right.
So having a support system to say, okay, this is an adjustment, don't freak out. Or youth athletes getting injured, or another thing is committing. Some of these athletes are committing at 14 years old.
14.
And there's a lot of pressure to that.
Oh, wow.
A lot of pressure.
Could only imagine.
Yeah. So I think sports psychology, to me, it's like, I always say, it's dealing with the mental health of an athlete, and across the board. It could be helping a pitcher through, be at their best on the mound. It can be someone who's trying to make it. It can be that they have a breakup, where they lost their dad right before they have to go perform. So anybody who's kind of going through an injury, is it something that they have to be able to accept? Like, hey, I getting a Tommy John, or I tore my ACL.
Projection Podcast is brought to you by Icebox Cryotherapy, located in La Cantera. You can reach them at 210-757-3660. Therapy studio specializing in athletic recovery, pain management, health and wellness, and beauty. Book now.
Obviously, they have to accept it first, right?
Yes.
So how would you go about training the mind to get back on that stage where you once were before that injury?
Well, the psychology of injury is a complicated one, because lately, I've had a lot of athletes, especially baseball players, and they come in, and sometimes they come in with like their confidence is down, or they have trouble throwing. You've heard of like the yips, where it's hard to throw it. Well, the yips is a deeper issue. Sometimes it's an injury that's never repaired that can cause you to deal with your confidence, and it could be as a result of a lot of super high unrealistic expectations from parents and coaches, fear of making mistakes. I've had some baseball players recently that come in, and I interview them over the phone, or even in the first session, and I'll say, does your arm hurt at all? Because the other thing is I've been through it, right? I've had a dislocated shoulder. And I had an athlete, pitcher, quarterback, and I said he was having some confidence issues. Throwing, I feel it hurts, but I suck it up. Everyone tells me to suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, and they become desensitized to it, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine."
Because you're hearing this, you're hearing it every day.
You're hearing it every day. Just suck it up. And I'm like, well, here, if you haven't, so I recommended. I said, listen, I know a lot of good docs in town. The only way to know is to get an MRI of your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell them the doctor to go to or doctors to go to. Turns out they have a tear. Within a week, they have surgery. I had another phone call, baseball player, 15, over the phone. I go, it sounds like your son may have a tear. Same thing. Send him to the doctor, MRI, having surgery. This is a commonplace. I had a softball player. All these, or they're afraid to get diagnosed because they're afraid to deal with the reality that they have to sit out their senior year because they're getting recruited. But then all of a sudden they're playing through all these injuries and it's only getting worse. So in my opinion, who doesn't get injured as an athlete? To me, it's commonplace. You're going to get injured. You know, I tore my ACL. I broke my ankle. I had reconstructive shoulder surgery. It's part of the course. So a part of it is, okay, accept it, get the best doctors you can, fix it properly. Because if not, that injury will linger, and then it could be career ending because they never really dealt with it. You know, so it's not always a confidence issue. There could be something physically wrong. So yes, you have to accept it. But there's things you can do. As far as I always say, everything has a silver lining. So I just had an injured athlete. We have this same conversation about being a better leader. You get stronger when you're in pain. So sometimes an injury can actually make you stronger than you were before the injury. Mentally and physically stronger.
I see. Yeah, because I remember, and I tore my ACL too in college, and I remember kind of going back, and it was tough. Like being comfortable and playing baseball when you haven't done it, and you're pretty much playing on a leg and a half.
How'd you tear yours?
I actually tore it playing basketball in the summer. I would go and play and work out, and I tore it playing basketball, and that was actually my senior year, and I didn't want to miss it. But it was hard knowing that it could happen again. So it was already instilled in my head that any sudden move, I can be back where I started, and then I'm really done.
Did you ever re-injure it?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some stories are, I can't tell anyone you're not going to re-injure it.
Right.
You know, but if you're doing your rehab and you're strengthening it, do you feel like you came back too soon from the injury?
I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that might have been exactly what it was.
And that's the thing is you don't want to rush. So even the Tommy Johns, I'm very, very, I've been through it, and I tell my athletes, like, find the right doctors. When people don't take my advice, I don't understand it half the time because, like, I know a lot of people in town. I know a lot of the doctors in town.
Doctors in town, yeah.
I know the good ones and the not so great ones. And then, I say get second or third opinions or go to this doctor. People do what they want to do. People are very headstrong and,
yes,
and they're
they are.
already in denial, and it's a problem sometimes. I'm like, okay, this is not what you do,
Right?
Or I highly recommend this, and still people will do what they want to do, but ultimately I think it's hurting. I mean, especially when you're having a major injury,
Right, 100%. And alone, you're playing baseball. Like you're gonna fail every game. Like if you have an injury and you're playing baseball, like that's just not good.
No,
at all. Like you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right. And so my kids, they're not pitchers. They pitch a little bit, and if they did, I think it's important. Like strength training is very important. Okay. Having the right technique is very important. Having the right coaches who understand, hey, we're not throwing. Like that's what's great about our program is, we don't overthrow the kids. In our last baseball practice, they have a bucket and they drop balls in there. They're very conscious about not overdoing it. And I see the opposite. That's rare. The problem I see with baseball is, and sports today is the unisport athlete. The only thing is baseball. It's fear-based. It's a bottom line. It's fear-based.
Fear-based. You said it.
Fear-based. It's fear of they're not going to get the scholarship. They're not going to go to E1. They're not going to be good enough. It's all fear-based. And so I've done the opposite. I actually want my kids to do like as many sports as possible. I don't want them to overdo it because I want them to love the game too, and I want them to be fresh. I get a lot of athletes who are burnt out at 15 or 16. I mean, I remember working a professional baseball player years ago, and I think he played for the Gators. And he said he never really loved baseball.
Really?
He said it was parent driven and I was good at it. So a lot of people think, and this is another issue is these kids come to me and I'm an advocate of like, you should be doing something because you love it. Right?
Exactly.
And parents are like, oh, but she's so good at it. Oh, he's so good at it. I'm like, that's not enough reason to do something.
100%.
You have to enjoy it. And then they'll go, but she can get a scholarship. I'm like, yeah, but you're taking away a scholarship for someone who really wants to be there. I go, to them, it's a job. Get a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they're going to want to walking out anyways after their freshman year. They're going to quit.
I think that really, what you said about being fear-based, that kind of really hit me, because for me, I remember going through it and playing. I didn't want to let my parents down. I wanted to be the best baseball player I can possibly be because they were so supportive. And I was afraid of failing because they were watching, you know, and it's crazy. And in baseball, you know, you need to learn how to fail. So going back to that, short-term memory loss is a phrase that I'm going to die by, you know, like you have to, in this sport, you have to learn how to let, and that in him, actually, Danny Heap was, my collegiate coach, and that's the first time I heard him say the phrase. I mean, Danny played with the Mets and won a couple World Series. He was played with Darryl Strawberry and things like that. But he's the one that told me, Hector, you got to have short-term memory loss. So going back to you, how do you go give back to someone and say, hey, you need to have short-term memory loss? Okay, you can say that, but how does that even process in your mind?
Well, part of it's our culture. A part of it's our culture because everyone, like you said, they run after a mistake. So many people are doing it wrong. They're teaching the opposite of what I'm teaching, right? So if you teach you can't make a mistake, or you're benched or you're pulled out when you make a mistake, you're reinforcing performance anxiety. And performance anxiety is fear. So if you're afraid you're going to get punished, then you're going to it's going to stick. So we have to train to unstick. So if I'm training athletes, like, who cares? Like, that's my favorite phrases in the world is when a pitcher will say, who cares? If you throw a ball, like, who cares? And it's actually better. You probably could have walked that person anyways and got out of the inning than you threw a strike and you didn't walk someone and they hit a bomb off you. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. So you know, that's the number one thing is what happens after the mistake. That's a champion mindset. That's what I learned too for myself. Is that mistakes are just learning opportunities, or mistakes are just being
learning
human.
Opportunities.
Because as we know, as an infielder and outfielder, but mostly as an infielder, and I played, is that all it has to do, the ball can take, it hit a little blade of grass or a little rock and it changes the trajectory of the ball. Right. And good coaches, great coaches who truly understand, who've played, know that. And they're not going to get mad. Yeah. It's the mental error. But even throwing can be mental, or it's physical. I mean, I watched the second baseman of the Dodgers a couple months ago on TV, and it was a second baseman, which is the shortest throw, or the pitcher's first, right? And he just winged it because he's human. Again, human. He winged it. He just lost his focus for a second, which we all do. And then I want to see how he would respond to that. And so we had another one, of course, right back to him, and he made I don't like the word perfect, but he had a nice throw right to the chest afterwards. So that's success.
That's right.
You make an error. We can't be focused all the time. I hate the word perfect. So I created a post-mistake routine to help athletes. Now, if people have a deep-rooted negativity or perfectionism and they hold on to mistakes longer, it gets a little trickier to implement, right? But if you have a routine that you do, because a lot of pitchers have a routine, you have a pregame routine, a pre-pitch routine, but having a routine after the mistake will help condition people to get out of
okay. That mistakes. Makes a lot of sense. So when you, for example, right, baseball, you're taught to, obviously it's a game of being fundamentally sound and things like that, but at the same time, you can't think about it. You kind of have to just go and play. So you have to kind of free up your mind to just be loose. Yep. Have fun. You know, and it's crazy because I try to tell that to kids. I'm like, Coach, well, how would you go about and have fun? I said, you know what I would do? I would chew gum because it would keep my mind away from thinking. Once I was thinking, I knew I was in trouble. You know, so I had to kind of reinvert, and it's knowing yourself. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what thinking does as far as you make an error, you strike out, and you start thinking like, oh man, I should have done this, or
right.
I saw that pitch, that next time I need to, you know, fix up my load or whatever it may be.
Well, I mean, you're always in baseball. There's a lot of time, so you're gonna have thoughts and feelings that come. But it's like, what are you feeding yourself? You know, because like, you know, in basketball and sports that are free flowing, it's very different because your focus is always on the external. In basketball, there's always someone, you know, you have to pass it to, or you're breaking through, and there's not a lot of time to think. It's more instinctive. So in baseball is a time, and golf is a time where you can get in trouble if you overthink. So it's like, okay, what are you feeding yourself? So if you make an error and you tell yourself, hey, you're good, move on, you move on, or what just happened is a good question you ask yourself. So if I charge the ball and I thought the ball was coming up because of, you know, it has a high hop, it's a hard infield, and then I didn't keep the glove down and it went under my glove. So instead I would be like, okay, Julie, no big deal. You're human. Just keep the glove down, next, move on, bring on the next pitch. So there's a way to kind of teach yourself, or if you have an at bat, there's a way to kind of go in a dugout and just do I always say a quick evaluation, a quick reflection, you know, or a pitch. Well, what happened there? So you're being your own best coach.
Right.
You're learning from it. You're accepting humanity. You're accepting things, and then you move on. Versus, oh, I should have, you know, should have, would have is very pressure-y. It's negative. It keeps you locked. It keeps you stuck. Should have is a conformist word, and it's a depressive word. So I kind of teach, okay, what are you telling yourself? How, you know, or this is fun. Like, oh my God, like I fucking love to play baseball. Like I love the challenge.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It's a challenge. It's one of the hard, that and golf, I think, is by far, and golf, I don't even want to get started because I feel like I'm a nobody when I'm on that golf course.
Because you haven't had years of technical training. That makes it hard. Yeah. You know, it's hard to trust your swing if you're not out there every day, right?
Exactly. So going back to that, out there every day. So performance, right? How do you perform at elite level? Do you think training plays a big deal with it as far as training your mind? Like, I'm ready to go. I literally woke up every morning and trained the right way, because there's a way to train bad too. And do you think training the right way just gets your performance level and your mind to be the best that you can be during that moment of playing in a baseball game?
Well, I think the key phrase is preparation is everything. So, you know, I tell the big thing, if you've had a test, you know, if you studied real hard for the test and you know you put everything into it, then when you get to test day, you tell yourself, I'm ready. You know, I've put the training in, I put the time in. You still feel nervous. I don't think there's ever a test that I've ever taken where I was completely confident, not nervous. And that goes the same thing with preparation for a game. I think a lot of people go, I shouldn't feel anxious, or I should be more confident. But who doesn't get a little nervous or get the butterflies?
It's normal.
Going? So you can say it's normal part of sport, or I'm excited. But I think the key is, if you've done the prep, you know, if you've done the extra work, and, you know, even if you read books on sports psychology, or you've done some mental training, or you've really prepared, you walk into that meeting going, I am ready. Like, let's nail this shit. Like, you know, I own the mound, for example, like, bring it. But if you don't do the work and you just kind of like, you're partying until 3 a.m. and, you know, you're not doing it, it's really hard to be confident. And
I feel like too, like, and I've seen, you know, kids train and collegiate guys train, and even some professional guys, and they're training, and there's beliefs in, you know, rotational hitting to linear swing level. And I'm not saying there's a right and wrong, but you have to find what fits for you, right? So kind of going back to that is like, you need to figure out who you are as a player, number one.
Yes.
Right? So if you're, you know, I say it all the time, if you're hitting 100 baseballs off the tee, what are you working on? You're not getting any better.
That's right.
You know, you think you are, and then you go in a game and it's, you think you're prepared, then you're not.
Well, I think that's a good point is, you know, and I tell my kids this too, or every practice, or every time they're in the cage or with their instructor, is what am I working on right now, and being deliberate and purposeful. If it's working on your hands, it's working on your load. If it's working on your hips, torque. So like you said, are you going in globally and just like, oh, I want to go to practice today? Or am I going to work on something? Am I work on my verbal? I'm going to be more encouraging to the team today, right? Am I going to be more positive today? So you're absolutely right. It's, you don't just want to go into HEB without a list, because who knows, you're going to come out with chips and a bunch of junk. You got to be specific and purposeful in maximizing that one or 2 hours of your time. And some people, you know, are afraid to get out of their comfort zone. They're afraid to take risks.
Right.
And good coaches will let you take some risks a little more. You know, like if you're a hitter that likes to sit back and wait. I was trained to be a first pitch hitter. So maybe that's a goal. Maybe your goal is for the day, if that first pitch isn't my pitch or it's a strike, I am going to be more aggressive. That could be your goal for the day.
Right.
Maybe long term, that's not your goal. But right now, I need to work on what I need to do right now in my life.
You're working on your craft.
Right.
Right. It's about working on your craft.
Yeah.
So
at this point.
Exactly. So, you know, I'll get calls and like, Hector, like, you need to go watch this kid play. And me as an agent, to be honest, I like to look for guys that are just look calm, and you see a baseball player, you know he's a baseball player. You know, from his actions, the way he takes the field, the way he talks in the dugout after the game. And it's all because they're so confident, right? But they're doing it in such a calm way.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to watch someone play. It's not like a football player where you're like, wow, that dude's an animal. In baseball, it's totally different.
Yeah.
So going back to that, I think, can you explain about how a baseball player having to be so calm, but yet alone you see someone who's just wild up the whole time, and I mean your nerves just get so tensed up, and as a baseball, you and I know if you're tensing up, it's probably not going to work out the best of your favor.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about how to go about a baseball game as far as the nerves and just being calm and kind of things of that nature?
It's challenging because you're talking about energy level, right?
Right.
So, you know, in baseball, I always say there's a scale of like 1 to 10. 10 is like totally jacked up and super excited or angry or whatever it is, jacked, and 0 is like flat. And I think it's important, just like your technical identity is, to find out what your psychological identity is, right? And it can change day to day. But if you didn't get a lot of sleep that night and you're waking up and you're kind of like flat, how do I get up? But you don't want to get up to the whole point where you're chucking it over the first baseman's head because you're too angry, or you're trying up there and trying to crush.
Yeah.
So like there's a term in hitting, it's aggressive under control, right? So you don't want to go up there and your goal is being aggressive, and then you wind up swinging at bad pitches. So it's a very hard balance of having the right energy and having the right calm at the same time. So it's a balance. You got to know yourself. You got to know who you are. You got to check in for the day and say, okay, am I tired? Was I up late last night? I was driving for 4 hours. Is it that I'm feeling, too much testosterone right now?
Right.
Like my son in the car, he goes, I just want to beat the shit out of someone. He did. He goes, Mom, I really want to get into a fight. He did.
At least he's being honest.
He's being completely honest. I want to tear some shit up. And I go, well, go work out. He goes, run's not enough. I go, don't beat your brother up. I hit a pillow. So sometimes you're just like, I want to hit nukes. Like they say, my son, I want to hit nukes.
Yeah.
I want to hit jacks.
You hear that all the time.
And
at
then the
level.
first pitch that he hasn't played in 4 months, he goes up in there, he never hardly strikes out. And he swings at a high pitch. And I go, Jake, what the hell? You know what happened there? And he goes, Mom, I got overexcited.
Trying to do too much.
But he knew it. And that's the key. Is
he knows it
himself. And so the next time he got up, he had a nice line drive, and you make those adjustments.
Exactly.
I tell him to always, it's always adjustments. So the same thing psychologically, it's adjustments. So, I know that when I played in the middle infield, I talked a lot of trash in my head because I wanted to be able to have enough energy that I was going to dive for a ball. That was like out of my range. I was like, I'm freaking diving for this shit anywhere. I'm gonna and I would tell myself up like
before it actually happens.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, bring it. I would curse in my head. I'm like, bring it, motherfucker. Like the harder I would say, the harder you hit it, the quicker your ass is out on first. And so I was always like, because when you're standing out there for hours on hours, it's tiring. It's it can be boring.
It could be.
You
right.
have to energize yourself all the time.
Well, if someone brought it to my attention and said, you play in a baseball game for 9 innings. In high school, it's 7. But in a collegiate game, professional game, you're playing for 9 innings. And you playing infield or outfield. Were you locked in for 9 innings? The answer was, most of them was yes. Okay. What about for the amount of pitches that pitcher threw? And they think about it like, well, how many pitches did he throw again? I said, exactly. He probably threw over, we went through 3 bullpens, 3 pitchers out of the bullpen. You're looking at over 150 pitches. So were you locked in and prepared and did your routine, your pre-pitch for over 150 pitches? And they think about it like, that's a good way to put it. Well, yeah, and that's part of getting yourself mentally prepared.
It is.
And that's a lot. 150 pitches to be tuned up.
Well, same thing with golf. 18 holes,
18
36
holes.
holes. It's a long time to be mentally locked in.
Locked in.
So you have to check in with yourself, a lot, because as soon as you're kind of standing around in the infield and you're kind of like, take it for granted, you're thinking what you want for dinner, the ball's hit to you, and that can be a very key play.
Right. So do you think being physically in shape and mentally in shape are two different things? Or you think that, obviously you think they correlate together?
I think everything goes hand in hand, because I feel like if you, like for example, kids, like my kids are starting to work out, and it is such a confidence builder, because, the 14U field is now regulation field. And my kids have always been a little on the smaller end. They're starting to catch up. Yeah. But that's why I did weightlifting. So now they're weightlifting, and now they're hitting balls that, 6 months ago would be harder to get out of the infield. And now they're getting out there, and I owe it a lot to their physicality. That's why cross training, they do basketball is a wonderful sport for baseball, because it's you're vertical, it's short jumping, it's everything. So that's why I recommend parents that they should be cross training, conditioning, weight training. So that leads into their mental, that leads into their confidence. And, I know my son's baseball coach does a lot of conditioning, more conditioning than I even ever had. And I think it's really great, because, your legs being out there for 3 hours, my son's a catcher, and catchers, so that's why I think it's important that parents, they don't be so fear-based. They look at really comprehensively training them. And and parents are spending a lot of money on the physical, but they're not spending enough on the mental.
Right.
The mental still is the least trained. People go to privates, they go to their technical coaches, they go to strength training, but not as many people are going for the sports psychology. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing a podcast too. And this podcast is important, that we need to educate people that you don't have to be screwed up. Everybody can work on their mental. Everybody should be working on their mental game to be a happier human being, a more evolved human being.
Exactly.
Enjoy what you're doing. Learn how to be a better human being. That's really what sports psychology is.
Right. So I think too, obviously I have these podcasts, they help me because I want to be a better version of me. And whatever you do, I feel like you have to be at the best of, training and doing things. If you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, hey, be that best person. But it all involves in here first. So that's why these podcasts and, mental training and performance training and things like that, I want to be more involved and know exactly how the human body and how the mind work. Because for my guys, I get calls to this day, guys that I'm representing and things like that. They're like, hey, how do I go about X's and O's and this? And I'm like, well, I'm not only an agent, but I want to be a coach. Yeah. I want to be a friend. Right. And I really want to be helpful for your future, because this is, I'm just not here just to pick up the phone and call me when you have a problem. I want to know exactly what you're going through, how you're living, what time you're waking up, so I can be the best.
You're invested in also being, and you care.
I care. Exactly. That's the biggest thing. I care, and for me, I hate not knowing things. Like if I don't know something, I want to pick up a book.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to that, right. And I know there's a big transition from minor league baseball into big league baseball. You got fans, you got a bigger stadium. Can you talk a little bit about visualizing, like visualizing a player either pitching or playing in a major league stadium, with 30,000 people compared to just 2,000? Because obviously that can be either it or not it for an athlete trying to go through the minor league phase, and then, you get your chance. You're in the big leagues.
Right.
Now you're playing in front of so many people. Yep. I mean, it's got to be.
I mean, it could be. It's exciting. It can be overwhelming. So I mean, I think big power. I do. I love reading about success and the power of visualization, because when you're visualizing something in your brain, you're seeing it happening before. So when you're a kid, you can actually see yourself playing, putting your Dodger, wearing your Yankees.
Right.
And, you stand up to the plate, your heart's beating out of your chest. So there's a lot of things you can do to visualize yourself, whether it's immediate or short-term or long-term, because the more you visualize something and the more you see it, you're mapping it and it's becoming ingrained. So if you hear like Manu Ginobili said that he was going to win 3 world championships before they happened, or Novak Djokovic, was holding the Wimbledon trophy at age 10. You hear a lot of people who are successful. They're seeing things happen ahead of time. But the other thing is, I remember reading the book Josh Hamilton. Remember Josh Hamilton?
Oh, incredible story.
Did you ever read his book, or you know a lot about him, right? His drug addiction.
Drug addiction, yeah.
And I think beyond belief. And I read his book, and in that book, he talked about how he had great parents, but then he went into the minors. He got drafted very young, and then he got a taste of cocaine. Oh yeah. and tattoos, and then he really struggled, but. He talks about that where he finally got called up for the first time. I don't know if it was in Chicago. I'm trying to think. And Jeff Conine, and I'm from Miami area. Yeah. Jeff Conine played for the Marlins. And I was there when the Marlins beat the Yankees, and they were the underdog with a bunch of no names. It was Renteria and
Edgar Renteria, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when A-Rod went over with the Yankees. He played third, and I remember being in the game. But Josh Hamilton got called up, and he was in the locker room, and he was really nervous. And Jeff Conine, who was a veteran, said to Josh, he said, listen, like, this is from the book, you've been doing this your whole life. Just play baseball. Don't change. The only difference is you just have more people, but just get locked into what you're doing. And at first, the first 1 or 2 games, your heart's beating out of your chest. But as soon as you get a taste of it and you get that experience, and it will become second nature. But it's normal. I mean, it's normal to be like, oh my God, like you're overwhelmed, excited your first time. Every new experience is supposed to be nerve-wracking. Your first date, you're going from elementary to middle school. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. But yeah, I mean, if you visualize yourself over and over again, where you have, where you take that deep breath,
that just blows my mind. Like visualizing something into reality, and then it happens. It's like what just happened?
All right.
It's like I actually looked into a podcast with Oscar De La Hoya, and he was kind of talking about that too, that he would visualize himself winning all these championships. And he goes, and when it happened, I was like, I didn't know who I was anymore. Like it's just insane.
It is.
But that's just the way it works, because you're visualizing so much that you're working towards that goal.
What you want to happen, it's like a giant magnet. Think about it. Your thoughts are magnets into your reality. So if you're thinking, I'm going to play professional baseball, I am going to win world championships, and that's the excitement, that magnet, but then your everyday behavior is attracting to that magnet. It's pulling you in more and more in your everyday. So like, for example, my kids were at a workout yesterday, and I picked them up, and afterwards, working out is hard. The guy pushes them. It was an hour and a half. They're running. With my son, they wear that thing they're doing a lot. That's where I met the guy who's playing the Astros. Yeah. And afterwards, I go, guys, I'm like, do you like to work out? And Nate goes, yeah. And then Jake goes, yeah, but I do it for my why. He goes, I know I work out because I know how much it's going to help me.
Wow.
At 14, he knows how much it's going to help him, and he sees the results. So that's a way to get gritty. It's not always fun to do that hard work. And I said, could you do that on your own? He goes, no, I couldn't do that workout. Like all those workouts, like I couldn't do on my own. People need help.
Yeah,
and I tell parents, like, you can't expect your kid to want to wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. and want to work out. That's not human nature.
Right.
It's not human nature to want to work out.
That's extremely hard to do.
Right. But you have sports psychologists to help with the mental game. You have personal trainers that help.
So speaking of that, you have the people to help you. How big is it important to have people in your corner that are supportive? And obviously you are who you hang out with. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because I've heard stories about other big leaguers and other successful people, and they found out who they were, and they're like, man, I can't hang out with these people anymore. They're just... So can you explain a little bit about that from maybe someone who's kind of going through that right now? Like they're trying to find a new group or clique to find that, because at the end of the day, everybody needs a push. Right?
Oh yeah,
we're human.
Oh yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how much that is really?
Well, I hate to say, the quote, "It's lonely at the top." It's true.
It's true.
Because everyone's trying to get your position. Everybody's trying to bring you down. I mean, psychology is deep. It's deep seated. So if people are partying, they could be trying to drag you in it. You have no idea what their intentions are. So, you have to find out. I become a support system for athletes too, that they know that I can't be with them all the time, but I'm a little bird perched on their
shoulder.
They laugh because I'm like, when you're pitching and you smile, I'm like, fucking strike this guy out.
Yeah.
You know that I'm in your corner. So I can't be with you all the time, but you pick who, and if they're not healthy for you, like, get rid of them, you go, hey, I'm going to go study later. And if someone's like, why the hell are you going to study? Well, they're not in your corner.
Yeah.
Or your girlfriend is like, why are you practicing much? Why don't you be with me? Well, I don't know about that one either. Finding, maybe it's lonely. Maybe you're lonely for a while. Maybe you're not in a relationship for a while because they're distracting you. So you either focus your distractions. My job is, what are your distractions from your success? So you have to learn to get rid of the people that are unhealthy, and it may be that you're alone.
Yeah.
And
that loans me, it's a good thing because you find out who you are. I believe so.
Yeah.
But wow, it's incredible. So we're pretty much out of time. Real quick, I forgot to ask you that. I should have asked you a while back. But who are some of the people you work with? As far as
I work with some major league players. I work with a lot of college baseball players, a lot of youth baseball players. I work with like Division I. I work with Division I teams. Softball, baseball, basketball. I work with. I'm just
so for the viewers back home watching. You're pretty much open for.
I am, and the greatest thing is people can Zoom me. Anywhere they can. We can do Zoom meetings. But I really think like, it's not going to get better. Like, you're just not. So if you can find out a way to why wait? I wish I would have had this younger.
Right? For sure. Because you learn about yourself. You learn about yourself.
And by having me on, people are getting a feel for the personality I am.
And at the end of the day, it's okay.
Yes.
That's what it's okay to be in a bad spot or, but.
If you're struggling, please. There's too many suicides, and I hate to say that. There are too many people that are wanting to take their life. And at the end of the day, you have to make yourself happy, but the sport isn't going to make you happy. Because at the end of the day, what if we have another COVID? What if you have a major injury? You have to be more than just your sport.
More than that, yeah.
I think one of the basketball players said that sports doesn't define me. It's just a hobby. So.
Yeah. Wow. I literally wish we had more time to talk about this. I think like this conversation can just go on forever and ever.
We can have another one. But
every time I talk to you, it feels like I've talked to you for 5 minutes and it's like an hour.
Yeah.
But okay, Dr. J, before we wrap it up, for anybody that wants some assistance, any athletes, collegiate, youth, parents, professional athletes, is there any way they can kind of get a hold of you? Do you want to talk about a little bit about maybe your phone or your website that they can?
Yeah, all you have to do is type in Texas Center for Sports Psychology, Texas Center for Sports Psychology, and that's my website. And there's my email, my contact information. I have a Facebook page, Texas Center for Sports Psychology, and then also my podcast. I did a 10 episode with baseball with other people on there and mental health.
Okay, awesome. There you have it. Thank you so much.